Right, so after Ross Young crushed my dreams regarding the iPhone SE4, John Prosser doubles down on the fact this SE4 is going to be based on the XR instead, and not the mini form factor, so let's delve into it. So yes, I was expecting the SE4 to adopt the mini form factor because I think there is a market of consumers who want cheap small iPhones, and considering refurbished 12 mini sold out at $439 within a day, that clearly does suggest there is demand for this, and so the SE4 being based on the 12 or 13 mini makes sense. And there were some leaks suggesting this, but now we have more credible sources like Ross Young and of course John Prosser telling us we could see the XR design instead. So John has given us renders of this, which is kind of confusing because we know how this SE4 is going to look. It's going to be the XR we had in 2018, so of course the renders depict that. But there are some changes with this. For example, the logo on the back has been centered. That's a change we saw with the iPhone 11 series. And also with the notch, there does seem to be no Face ID sensors, and that again has been rumored because we've heard about Touch ID coming to the power button with the SE4 instead. And so the notch is going to be kind of pointless on this, and is literally going to be there for the earpiece and the FaceTime camera on the front. Now John does suggest we're going to see 3 basic colours like we've seen with previous SE models, but personally I doubt this because a lot of us weren't expecting colours to come to the base iPads, but of course with the new refresh they have given us bright colours, and so I'm praying this also applies to the SE4 because the XR did have amazing colours. I think it was the best range of colours the regular iPhone ever got, and so retaining that for the SE4 would be great. But that still does not make up for the fact this is a design from 2018, so of course we have thick bezels, LCD, and overall this is going to be pretty archaic when of course it does launch in early 2024. And yes, I know some have argued this is a logistic move since of course Apple does recycle older designs, but also the SE is supposed to be bad on purpose and is supposed to upsell you to higher end models. Well, to be honest, I don't entirely agree with that because number one, Apple always reuses designs that are still in production, and of course the XR was discontinued years ago, so of course producing this would be more expensive. Since the main reason the SE is so cheap is because Apple's reusing parts that are already in circulation. That's what happened with the SE1, which of course was based on the 5S, the SE2 was based on the 8, and so this SE4 should ideally be based on a design that's still in production, which is why I think the 13 mini makes sense. And also using the mini form factor for the SE would not cannibalize the higher end models because number one, the mini size won't appeal to everyone, there are consumers who want bigger screens, but also battery life is still not going to be great with the SE4 if it is based on the mini, so of course there are incentives to get the higher end models. But I'm not a fan of having yet another 6.1 inch iPhone because I think that convolutes the lineup. The iPad range is facing this right now because there are 3 11 inch iPads, and so yes, Apple should be offering different sizes, and that's why the mini form factor makes sense. So yes, while these sources are pretty credible, I do still believe and still do want a 13 mini based SE instead. And they can gladly compromise on some features, give it a single lens on the back, give it a Touch ID scan on the sides, but ultimately retaining the mini form factor at a low price would be great. And yes, I know some of you guys have mentioned the fact if Apple was to redesign the 13 mini slightly and of course give it a single lens on the back and Touch ID support, would that go against the idea of this SE formula? Because Apple rarely fiddles with the design of the SE models. Well, to that I say Apple has modified cheaper products in the past to give them artificial limitations. We saw this with the original Air because it was more expensive to have Touch ID on the sides, but Apple spent the money to modify the iPad Pro chassis and of course add that on the iPad Air because they wanted artificial limitations with this. And recently with the iPad 10, this clearly should have got Apple Pencil 2 support, but Apple instead decided to remove the strip, redesign this and move the camera to landscape, and then design a whole new adapter for Apple Pencil 1 support. And so again, Apple is willing to spend more cash on R&D to make limitations with their cheaper products. And so yes, much like those iPads, Apple changing the 13 mini slightly to of course have a single lens on the back and no Face ID makes sense. And hey, maybe they also remove MagSafe with this, I honestly don't care, just give us the mini form factor at, of course, a low price. Anyways, let's delve into your comments. So Aurora says SE4 must have Touch ID and OLEDs, and a headphone jack if possible. Now Touch ID and OLED I could see materialize, but I don't see Apple ever giving us back the jack on iPhones. We're fully into wireless now with AirPods. They make way more money for Apple, and ultimately, apart from a few budget Android phones, most smartphones have moved on and has completely got rid of the jack, so yes, I doubt we're going to see it. I mean, do remember it's going to be nearly a decade since Apple removed the jack, and they've yet to reverse it with any iPhone, so yes, it's a permanent change. So Opus Digital Audio says the 10R body makes sense, after that the 10 will be next, followed by the Mini. And I personally doubt that. Like I've said in the past, the SE being based on both the 10R and the 10 does not make sense because those phones have been out of circulation for years, Apple has stopped producing them, and of course, at the end of the day, the SE is a recycle bin device, Apple just combines parts they already produce, and so I do think it's going to be the 13 mini, and I'm praying that's the case because that design would be perfect. So Quandy says, will this have the A16 Bionic? And yes, I do think that's going to be the case, considering the regular iPhone 15 models should get the upgrade to the A16 chip, and so the SE4 should follow suit. So Setra says, what's going to be the release date for the new SE? Now this should be early 2024, so either expect a March event or press releases in March for this SE4. So Aman Gupta says, 10R design, squared edges, LCD screen, A15 Bionic, 399. And while parts of that I don't think are going to be the case, particularly squared edges, Apple's not going to redesign the chassis of the 10R. The whole point of the SE is to recycle all the designs without changing one single thing about them, so of course, it's either going to get the rounded edges of the 10R design or get the mini design instead with the squared edges. But there's definitely not going to be a hybrid design of sorts where Apple combines the 10R and the squared edges. That's not going to be the case. However, the other predictions could be right. So Pepita Chip says it's going to be the 12 mini, not the 13 mini, and I doubt that because the 12 mini has been killed off. And as I said before, Apple does base iPhone SE designs on chassis they currently produce, and that only applies to the 13 mini that of course Apple still sells. That's again why I do have my doubts about the 10R becoming the SE4, but let's see what happens. So yeah, those are my thoughts guys, but tell me your thoughts in the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching guys, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumours. Check out the video in the link above on details regarding the M2 iPad Pros, and on that note, see ya peeps.